Prince Harry's memoir Spare did more than top bestseller lists. It shook the very foundations of the royal narrative. When Harry revealed that a physical altercation allegedly took place between him and Prince William in 2019, the public was stunned. For decades, the image of the two brothers had been carefully curated. The inseparable sons of Princess Diana, united in grief, bound by loyalty, standing shoulder to shoulder against the world. But in 2023, that image cracked, and it was Harry who dared to tell the story. In Spare, Prince Harry described a confrontation at his London home, Nottingham Cottage, where he claims Prince William arrived already angry, piping hot, ready for a fight. According to Harry, William repeated tabloid accusations about Meghan Markle, calling her difficult, rude, and abrasive. What shocked readers most was Harry's claim that the argument escalated physically and that William allegedly knocked him to the floor. For many, this was the moment everything changed. The fairy tale of brotherly unity was replaced with a much darker, more complicated reality. And while critics rushed to defend William, what often gets ignored is the courage it took for Harry to speak openly about what he says happened, especially knowing the backlash he would face. Let's pause here and examine something important. Prince Harry did not gain anything politically by sharing that story. He didn't strengthen his royal standing, he had already stepped back. He didn't protect his image in the British press, he knew full well the backlash would be swift. What he did do was expose what he felt was a pattern. His brother, influenced by negative media narratives about Meghan, confronting him not as a concerned sibling but as someone echoing tabloid talking points. Harry wrote that William's anger felt like it was parroting the press. That word, parroting, matters. Because for years Harry has argued that the royal institution and certain members within it allowed negative press narratives about Meghan to flourish unchecked. In his view, the palace not only failed to defend his wife, it may have allowed those narratives to spread. And this is where the contrast between the brothers becomes stark. Prince William, the future king, is often portrayed as steady, measured, and dignified. But Harry's account paints a different picture, one of someone overwhelmed by media pressure and internal palace tensions, lashing out instead of listening. If Harry's version is accurate, it suggests that William allowed external narratives to poison a deeply personal relationship. Supporters of William quickly dismissed Harry's account. Sources close to William reportedly described the story as a cheap shot. That phrase, interestingly, minimizes the seriousness of the allegation. If there was no physical altercation, one would expect a firm denial. Instead, what emerged through biographical commentary was a suggestion that tensions were high, words were exchanged, but there was no violence. The new biography, by royal editor Russell Myers, a figure closely associated with royal reporting, leaned heavily on unnamed insiders defending William. According to those sources, William was merely sticking up for staff, who were reportedly unhappy. But here's the critical question. Why was the conversation framed as defending staff, rather than discussing why Meghan was being portrayed negatively in the media in the first place? It's easier to frame William as the protector of palace staff. It's harder to confront whether unconscious bias, institutional rigidity, or media pressure may have contributed to escalating tensions around Meghan in the first place. Harry's account doesn't just describe an argument, it describes a turning point. For years, Harry had positioned himself as the protective husband. His mother, Princess Diana, had suffered under intense press intrusion. Harry has often spoken about his trauma related to losing her. In Meghan's treatment by sections of the British media, Harry saw echoes of the past. He believed he had to act decisively to protect his wife and his growing family. When William allegedly repeated tabloid criticisms, it likely felt to Harry not just like a disagreement, but like betrayal. Because growing up, the brothers were each other's shield. They faced paparazzi together. They walked behind their mother's coffin together. They built charitable foundations together. The public believed they were inseparable. But adulthood and hierarchy changes dynamics. William is the heir. Harry is the spare. That imbalance was embedded from birth. In Spare, Harry reflects on that reality with painful honesty. He describes feeling secondary, less important, less protected. When insiders dismiss the physical altercation story as exaggerated, they focus on protecting William's reputation. But Harry's emotional experience is often sidelined. Whether one believes the account fully or not, Harry clearly experienced that moment as traumatic and symbolic of a deeper fracture. And what about Meghan? She has often been described in palace-adjacent reporting as difficult, but rarely is the context examined. Meghan entered an institution that has existed for centuries, rigid, tradition-bound, hierarchical. She was a divorced American actress, biracial, outspoken, independent. To some, that was refreshing. To others, threatening. Harry has consistently defended her, and in doing so, he challenged the very system his brother is destined to lead. That tension between reform and preservation may be the real heart of the conflict. William's defenders argue that he approached Harry out of concern for staff well-being. That may well be how he saw it, but intent and impact are not the same. If William truly wanted to mediate, one wonders why the conversation escalated at all. Why arrive piping hot? Why allow tempers to boil over? And why, years later, does the palace narrative still revolve around dismissing Harry's account rather than acknowledging that perhaps both brothers were deeply hurt? One of the more telling details in the biography was the suggestion that Catherine, Princess of Wales, had been the voice of reason between the brothers, but eventually gave up. That detail speaks volumes. It suggests the divide was not superficial. It wasn't a simple misunderstanding. It was entrenched, deep, painful. But notice something else. When sources defend William, they do so anonymously. When Harry tells his story, he attaches his name to it. He signs it. He owns it. He risks public scrutiny. That's a key difference in approach. Harry has chosen radical transparency. Whether through interviews, documentaries, or his memoir, he has put his perspective on the record. William, bound by royal convention, rarely responds directly. Instead, the counter-narrative emerges through biographers and unnamed insiders. And in the modern media age, silence can sometimes look like avoidance. Of course, William cannot publicly engage in a back and forth without undermining the monarchy's image of stability. But that institutional restraint also means Harry's voice dominates the emotional narrative. For many younger audiences especially, Harry's willingness to speak openly about mental health, family conflict and trauma feels authentic. It resonates. William, by contrast, represents continuity, duty, tradition, restraint. There's nothing inherently wrong with that, but in moments of crisis, rigidity can feel cold. The physical altercation claim symbolized more than just a scuffle. It symbolized a clash of world views. Harry believes in confronting problems head-on, even if messy. William operates within an ancient system designed to absorb conflict quietly. The tragedy is that these two approaches could have complemented each other. Instead, they collided. And when insiders call Harry's account a cheap shot, it raises another question. Why dismiss the pain instead of addressing it? Even if William remembers the event differently, the mature response might have been to acknowledge that emotions were high and that reconciliation is desired. Instead, the narrative often feels defensive, focused on reputation management rather than relationship repair. From a public perception standpoint, Harry's story humanized him. It showed vulnerability. It showed imperfection. It showed that royal life behind palace walls isn't a fairy tale. William's camp, meanwhile, appears focused on preserving the image of calm leadership. But leadership is also about accountability. If there was no physical violence, a clear and transparent denial from William himself would carry more weight than anonymous quotes in biographies. The choice not to address it directly leaves the debate suspended in ambiguity. Meanwhile, Harry continues building a life outside the institution in California, with Meghan focused on philanthropic ventures, mental health advocacy, and raising their children away from intense palace scrutiny. Whether one agrees with every choice he's made, it's undeniable that Harry chose autonomy over hierarchy. And that choice required courage. William remains within the system. He is the future king. His path is defined. His duty is set. Stability is his mandate. But stability without empathy can feel distant. In many ways, the brothers represent two different futures for monarchy. Reform versus preservation. Openness versus discretion. Personal truth versus institutional loyalty. The altercation story was explosive not because of the physical detail, but because it shattered the myth of unity. And perhaps that myth was always fragile. What makes this saga so compelling is that it's not just about two princes, it's about family, ego, media pressure, identity, power. Harry has framed his journey as one of liberation-breaking cycles, protecting his wife, confronting trauma. William, through his defenders, frames the situation as exaggerated and unfortunate disagreement blown out of proportion. The truth likely sits somewhere complex in between. But here's what cannot be denied. Harry was willing to risk everything to tell his story. And that willingness has reshaped the royal conversation forever. Takeaway is clear. Regardless of where one stands, Prince Harry's memoir forced transparency into an institution that thrives on opacity. He broke the silence. He challenged hierarchy. He exposed fracture lines, and in doing so, he changed the monarchy's narrative forever.